emails and reminders too, so inshallah
Okay.
it'll be fine. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Welcome everyone to our third week and the 20th flash on sincerity. So inshallah today, will be the third installment, and next week inshallah will be the last of this topic. We had covered the first and second reason, and inshallah I'll go over like the main question of this part, so that newcomers to this session will also be seeing what we are actually discussing. Inshallah today we'll try to cover third and fourth reasons, and next week we'll probably summarize the remaining fifth, sixth, and seventh, and finish it with that. And again, inshallah, I invite all of you to read for yourself the section 20th Flash. Indeed, it is a great section in terms of teaching us how to keep sincerity in the cause of belief and religion. So we summarized this last week as well, but I'll talk to it again a little bit. Basically, the 7 reasons that is given for a question that is asked that I will cover in the next slide is that about disunity among the believers. And again, in each of these reasons, there are 2 sections. One section is basically a reaffirmation of belief or reaffirmation of confidence for the believers that there is nothing weak in the fundamentals of the religion. Secondly, there are lessons or practical ways through the support of hadith and verses from the Quran about like why we need to actually unite in this age, and why that is actually better than going alone in the service of the Quran. Inshallah, today Dr. Colin Turner will join us again, alhamdulillah, and Fatiha Talai be from New Jersey, inshallah, will join us too, and I will moderate the session, inshallah. So I'll, inshallah, read the question again. It's in the beginning of the 20th flash, and then jump to the third reason. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إنا أنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق فاعبد الله مخلصا له الدين ألا لله الدين الخالص. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Verily, we sent the book down to you in truth, so worship God in sincerity, and God's is sincerely practiced religion. And there is a hadith. هلك الناس إلا العالمون وهلك العالمون إلا العاملون وهلك العاملون إلا المخلصون والمخلصون على خطر عظيم. All men will perish except the scholars, and all scholars will perish except those who act in accordance with their knowledge. And all of them will perish except the sincere, and even the sincere are in great danger. And there is that question after these. The above verse and hadith demonstrate together how important a principle of Islam is sincerity. An important and awesome question. Why is it that while the worldly and the neglectful and even the misguided and hypocrites cooperate without rivalry, the people of religion, the religious scholars, and those who follow the Sufi path oppose each other in rivalry, although they are the people of truth and concord? Agreement belongs in reality to the people of concord and dispute to the hypocrites. How is it that these two have changed places? The answer, we will set forth 7 of the extremely numerous causes of this painful, disgraceful, and awesome situation, one that causes the zealous to weep. So this was the question in the beginning of the 20th flash. So as I said, inshallah, I'll jump to the third cause and I'll read through, and then inshallah, we can talk about it. Third cause, disagreement among the people of truth does not arise from lack of zeal and aspiration, nor Does union among the people of misguidance arise from loftiness of aspiration? That which impels the people of guidance to the misuse of their high aspiration, and hence to the disagreement and rivalry, is the desire for heavenly reward that is counted as a praiseworthy quality in respect of the hereafter, and extreme eagerness with respect to duties pertaining to the hereafter. Thinking to oneself, let me gain this reward. Let me guide these people. Let them listen to me. He takes up a position of rivalry towards the true brother who faces him and who stands in real need of his love, assistance, brotherhood, and aid. Saying to oneself, why are my pupils going to him? Why don't I have as many pupils as him? He falls prey to egoism, inclines to the chronic disease of ambition, loses all sincerity, and opens the door to hypocrisy. The cure for this error, this wound, this awesome sickness of the spirit, is the principle that God's pleasure is won by sincerity alone, and not by a large following or great success. For these latter are a function of Allah's will. They cannot be demanded, although they are sometimes given. Sometimes a single word will result in someone's salvation and hence the pleasure of God. Quantity should not receive too much attention, for sometimes to guide one man to the truth may be as pleasing to God as guiding 1,000. Moreover, sincerity and adherence to the truth require that one should desire the Muslims to benefit from anyone at any place they can. To think, let them take lessons from me so that I gain the reward, is a trick of the soul and the ego. All men greedy for reward in the hereafter, and the performance of deeds entitling you to that reward. There have been certain prophets who had only a limited following, but received the infinite reward of the sacred duty of prophethood. The true achievement lies then not in gaining a vast following, but in gaining God's pleasure. What do you imagine yourself to be that saying, let everyone listen to me, you forget your function and interfere in what is strictly Allah's concern? To gain acceptance for you and to have people gather around you is Allah's concern. So look to your own duty and concern and do not meddle with Allah's concerns. Moreover, it is not only humans who earn reward for those who hear and speak the truth. The sentient and spiritual beings of God and His angels have filled the universe and adorned its every part. If you want plentiful reward, take sincerity as your foundation and think only of Allah's pleasure. Then every syllable of the blessed words that issue forth from your mouth will be brought to life by your sincerity and truthful intention, and going to the ears of innumerable sentient beings, they will illumine them and earn your reward. For when, for example, you say, Alhamdulillah, praise and thanks be to Allah, millions of these words, great and small, are written on the page of the air by Allah's leave. Since the all-wise inscriber did nothing prodigally or in vain, he created innumerable ears, as many as were needed to hear those multiple blessed words. If those words are brought to life in the air by sincerity and truthful intent, they will enter the ears of the spirit beings like some tasty fruit in the mouth. But if Allah's pleasure and sincerity do not bring those words to life, they will not be heard, and reward will be had only for the single utterance made by the mouth. Pay good attention to this, you Quran reciters, who are sad that your voices are not more beautiful and that more people do not listen to you. So this was the third cause. Of course, the first part talks about the zeal, aspiration, and then misuse of that, directly goes into the misuse of that. And I think this trick of shaitan and ego about this race, I guess, about gaining more followers, getting your word out to more people as if that is the only way. So, inshallah, I'll ask our panelists about this. And our Nabi says, which is actually is a good comment there. Awesome is considered a positive word. This is in this case, I think this is used as like a grand or a big question, like the elephant in the room sense. So I'll start with maybe Fatih abi. Like this third cause, is again about this trick of the shaitan. What do you think about this? First, I guess this part about the, lack of aspiration, and then like how this is misused that we see.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
My
salam.
thoughts. What I understand as a lesson from this part, the main point is like even the best of abilities, feelings, or sincere desires, etc., can be misused and they can become harmful. So let's remember the hadith that you mentioned, and that's at the start of this section. All men will perish except the scholars, and all scholars will perish except those who act in accordance with their knowledge, and all of them will perish except the sincere, and even the sincere are in great danger. I think in this Risale, I mean, all those points or causes show different aspects of that danger, that we might lose the sincerity in our actions. And in this third part, it is the misuse of those high aspirations is the danger, and which will result in the loss of sincerity, which will in result make our efforts or deeds worthless, or like worth less than they might have with the sincere intentions. And there is nothing wrong to earn rewards for the hereafter, but if it causes rivalry, then it becomes dangerous and it may result harm. That's where the danger lies.
So how should we, maybe a question here, like how should we contrast this? Right, there's also like this in the tradition, right? There's this hadith about like compete in the way of good, right? And also we have seen in about Sahaba, there's like famous story, right? When getting prepared for Battle of Tabuk, right? Omar radiallahu anh brings half of his belongings, and then Abu Bakr radiallahu anh brings all of his belongings, right? And he says, I left Allah and His Rasul for my family. There is that sense of competition there, but I think could there be like a misunderstanding of that concept with like reaching more people or getting people to listen to, or like getting people to follow one, or like how should we understand or balance these two concepts?
Yeah, competition. I mean, competition. I don't think competition is a bad thing, itself. But for example, I'm not into sports very much, but in sports, I mean, they compete, and some might be harsh to the other team or other ones who are competing. They like cheat them, or they try to make them fall or whatever, and then they get punished for that. And some even like help other competitors, and then they get special rewards for them, even they don't become the first. So like competition is not a bad thing, but like fighting while competing is what makes that competition bad. Or losing sincerity, on the other hand.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like it is, there's, yeah, like the fair play, right? In this scenario, I guess this probably needs to be there, right? This one. Thank you. Colin Abi, if we go to you, what are your thoughts about this? You know, and you probably have seen this as well, like this misuse of this high aspiration, or and like maybe misunderstanding of this concept of competition, and maybe getting, you know, trying to seek more followers, or feeling, you know, rivalry against some other believers who might have more followers, or, you know, be it on Twitter or be it in person. Can you get your thoughts about this?
Bismillah. Yeah, I think what we do is we confuse two realms always. Most of our problems actually comes from that. We confuse mulk with malakut a lot of times. We confuse worldly or this worldly rewards with next worldly rewards. In this world, we have to exist. We need a livelihood. And obviously, there are some things which are guaranteed to us in this world. Our livelihood is guaranteed. What we actually need is guaranteed, but what we want is not guaranteed. So anything over and above what we actually need has not been guaranteed. So anything that we do for the sake of our deen shouldn't be done for the sake of this worldly livelihood. So what we know that the reward for any effort in this direction comes in the next world, and that makes it difficult for us because we are living in a causal universe, and if we don't understand causes properly, then we still operate causally. We think spiritually, but we operate causally, and it doesn't work like that, because we may, like Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam, the Prophet Noah. Apparently, he preached for 600 years, and he only had 2 followers. One was his cousin, and the other was a madman. This is, I think, Rumi talks about this, or Attar, I'm not sure. But the point is that he preached in the open and secretly, night and day. He did all of these things. Quran is quite clear about this. And yet, his followers didn't really betoken that kind of effort. But that effort will be recognized in the next world. Now, this was a prophet, and I'm sure for prophets, it's just as galling to think that you've worked so hard and you're not being recognized. We know this with Hazrat Yunus. There was this issue. So when it comes down to ordinary believers, then we think we aspire spiritually, but we think causally. And therefore, when we have lots and lots of followers, it seems to betoken some kind of success and some kind of, it gives a kind of validation to what we're doing. But there may be a correlation, but there is no causal relationship between the two. And therefore, having a large audience is no guarantee of quality. And having a very, very small audience is no guarantee of lack of quality. And we have to understand this. For example, our Sunday meetings here, we attract a certain number of people, and depending on people's expectations, some may say that, oh, we don't have that many people listening. But that's not a reflection of what we do. If we had 200 people listening, that wouldn't also be a reflection of what we do necessarily. So it's all down to intention. It's all down to how we ourselves conceptualize reward and punishment. If we don't get reward in this world, you know, the reason why unbelievers are so united and are so sincere in their uniting is because they know any rewards to be had are to be had in this world. And therefore they work very hard for them. We, on the other hand, know that rewards don't come necessarily in this world. And therefore we can't really gauge our success on the basis of rewards, because it may not reflect our success. And this tends to make us a little bit egoistic because, as I said, we're thinking causally.
Yeah.
And so we try to get people to listen to us rather than to listening to Taqi or Naqi or whoever. And therefore that causes rivalry, that causes hostility. And that really is enough to make someone weep, you know, because we are supposed to be the people of unity. And yet, if you go on to, you know, social media and online, it is full of, you know, Google sheikhs and Google scholars and all of these people who want more likes than anyone else, who want more followers than anyone else. And you see it quite openly, the rivalry, and it's pitiful. We have to stop aspiring spiritually and thinking causally. We have to think spiritually as well.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. This is definitely a great point, right? Like I think the materialism in this age somewhat infected the believers. Looks like where we.
You're right. It's religious materialism.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right.
SubhanAllah. We try to measure our rewards. We try to quantify our rewards by correlating them to the number of people who listen to or the number of followers. But yeah, and this example, I'll come to the. It is a good example and probably talks to your you know, statement about we are mixing Alam-i Mulk and Malakut, and this is like a good example of how Alam-i Malakut, the unseen realm, the Alam-i Ghaib, and what we don't see about like the angels and the, you know, zero, the spiritual beings Allah created filling the universe, and since we are maybe cut out from that realm in our daily lives, we don't think about that, reflect upon that. Maybe this, and this is probably this example there about, you know, and if you want to probably quantify that, so I'll read this part again. If you want plentiful reward, take sincerity as your foundation and think only of Allah's pleasure, then every syllable of the blessed words that issue forth from your mouth will be brought to life by your sincerity and truthful intention, and going to the ears of innumerable sentient beings, they will illuminate them and earn your reward. For when, for example, you say Alhamdulillah, praise and thanks be to Allah, millions of these words. So if you want to quantify, I guess, millions of these words, great and small, are written on the page of the air. They spread in the air by Allah's leave. Since the All-Wise Inscriber did nothing prodigal or in vain, He created innumerable ears. This is innumerable, right? Again, a large quantity there. As many as were needed to hear those multiple blessed words. If those words are brought to life in the air by sincerity and truthful intent, and I think this is probably a key word here that we can discuss, by sincerity and truthful intent, they will enter the ears of the spirit beings like some tasty fruit in the mouth. But if Allah's pleasure and sincerity do not bring those words to life, this is an interesting thing, I guess, bringing words to life, they will not be heard, and rewards will be had only for the single utterance made by the mouth. Pay good attention to this, you Quran reciters who are sad that your voices are not more beautiful and that more people do not listen to you. So this is probably a connection to this, I guess, worldly and I mean causal world, and how we don't think about these other realms, and how sincerity can bring things to life. Fatabi, any comments about these two, you know, parts, like what we think about, what we don't think about when we are sincere, and any comments about these, like how sincerity brings life to our statements?
I mean, not exactly that, but this example, the sound traveling through air to the ears
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
of people, is a wonderful example, and Ustad uses this example in different contexts at different places of Risale. And we only use a very little effort to say something. But Allah creates millions of words from that effort, and then they go to the ears of other people. And it's the same with the knowledge, wisdom we are trying to pass to the others. I mean, it doesn't have to be sound. It can be a something that we write, or an email, or whatever. The understanding of that knowledge that we try to pass with the things that we write or we say, and the acceptance of that wisdom, that all comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, sometimes, like, we try to explain something to somebody, but he doesn't understand that. And our understanding as Muslims is, our trying to explain something to somebody, it's just like a prayer for us. Allah is the one who's gonna put that knowledge or wisdom to that person's heart or mind. So we try our best, and sometimes, like, we try like maybe sometimes years, but somebody else says something to that person, and then he accepts the truth. So we don't know who is the reason for that person's accepting the truth. I mean, our prayers are accepted, but, like, we are not the one seeing the result, and it's not important, but, like, the end result is like a good result. So our duty is just to try. And just to add another point to this, although this part we are reading gives us excellent solutions to the sometimes meaningless divisions among Muslims, it also teaches us, reminds us of our duties as Muslims. And also, we are not, and also the results of our duties come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are not responsible for the results. And by doing that, and this Risale is also repairing our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and teaching us to do everything in accordance with his orders, and try to seek his pleasure. Just as a last point, Surah Al-Ikhlas, like, Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad, never mentions sincerity in it. Like, the name is like sincerity, but it never mentions sincerity in it, because, like, sincerity is trying to do whatever Allah wants us to do because he deserves that, and this surah gives us all the reasons why he deserves that obedience from us.
Oh, yeah, excellent. That's a great point about Surah Ikhlas. And I loved when you said, this Risale is about repairing our relationship, and like, how our approach to maybe worship and service to Quran is supposed to be. And I think when you said that, this part that is, like, kind of strong, right? A strong language about, like, what do you imagine yourself to be, right? It is almost like it is there's almost like a implication that we might be in some sort of a hidden shirk when we try to demand the results. So this is indeed, that is itself something broken in our relationship with Allah. Looks like, what do you imagine yourself to be? That saying that everyone listen to me, you forget your function and interfere in what is strictly Allah's concern. To gain acceptance for you and to have people gather around you is Allah's concern. So look to your own duty and concern and do not meddle with Allah's concerns. Indeed, it is pretty strong, and what you said reminds me of this. This is subhanallah, pretty good. And I guess if our relationship with Allah, and if we know our place, I guess in that equation, lots of things inshallah will fall into their places. Colin abi, any comments about this relationship part before we go into the next cause?
The relationship
between the, Fatah said the Risale is also about repairing the relationship between the, the servants or abd and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about, by teaching us our place in like what we can do, what we are not supposed to meddle with, right? I mean, or of course also in the light of trying to ask for the results, or trying to demand the results.
Yeah, demanding the results again comes down to our misreading of causes and our expectations that causes were going to follow effects. Effects are going to follow causes, sorry. So it's thinking in a materialistic way, and causality, of course, is really at the very heart of materialism, thinking causally, and thinking that if I do this, then that will happen. And if I get all of these followers, then it reflects my prowess, it reflects my acumen, my talent, and it doesn't. There is no necessary connection between what we do and what happens as a result. And we have to put our relationship right, and actually we have to get our interpretive position right. We have to understand that we live in a causal universe, but that causes do not create, and that the only thing that infuses an act with sacrality is intention. Every act can be an act of worship if the intention behind it is a sacred one. And this goes with khidmat, with service. The service is not in order to gain followers. The service is to serve Allah. At the same time, we can't deny that there is some kind of connection between what we do and the following that we gather for ourselves. But we can't make that hard and fast. You can never ever say that having a lot of followers means a particular thing.
Indeed, it almost feels like, some of our weaknesses in the belief matters, someone seeps into our actions also as we are trying to serve religion. But inshallah, as things get more stronger on the belief realm, inshallah, they will also get better in the khidmat, in the serving Allah's cause.
I think the underlying problem is going back to the hadith that you read out at the beginning, Mustafa, about the danger is with ulama. The ulama are in danger, and it's only the sincere ulama also have to be, they're also at risk. The problem is, our problem is that we have misunderstood the term ilm and ulama. This is a huge problem. We think that ilm is just knowledge. It's not. It's actually ilm is ma'rifatullah. Originally, it meant knowledge of Allah, knowledge about Allah. And the ulama, and the verse in the Quran is quite clear. Those who are most afraid are the ones who know Allah, right? Those who are most in awe are the ones who know Allah. Now, or the ones with knowledge, al-ulama, right? But there is only one kind of knowledge that can make you aware of Allah and make you afraid of His wrath, and that is knowledge of who He is. Knowledge of kalam is not going to do that. Knowledge of philosophy is not going to do it. Knowledge of hadith is not going to do it. Knowledge of fiqh is not going to do it. It's not going to make us have khushu and be fearful of Allah. Knowledge of Allah will make us fearful of Allah. And our foundation is wrong. How we approach, this whole idea of getting followers and knowledge, spreading knowledge, and ilm is written on every, is a farida for every Muslim man and woman. We have to correct this. We have to revisit this. and try to understand what that knowledge should be. And of course, knowledge of fiqh is very, very sweet, but it serves the ego. It doesn't serve Allah. You know, if we don't do it properly, it serves the ego. All knowledge serves the ego if it's not done properly. And this is why there will be rivalry. If we've misunderstood the very basis of our striving, that is ilm, what ilm is, if we've misunderstood that, then, you know, when you ask why are we rivals like this? Why are we hostile to each other? Why do we compete with each other in a very negative way? One of the reasons is that we have misunderstood this word and the implications.
Yeah, it's indeed a very great point. It reminds me of one, you know, analogy that Ustad Nursi makes about when the foundations of a building is in danger of collapse, you know, painting the walls will not really help anyone. So I think it is indeed like the Ma'rifatullah, the most basic and the most important item is being maybe skipped or taken for granted, unfortunately, although it is in much danger at this time, and focusing on the aesthetics or the secondary things is definitely maybe not helping the problem. I'll read through some of the comments that were made on the chat, and inshallah I'll go to the fourth cause. So I already read about the comment about the word awesome. Usage of it here is more about grand, from Haunabi. Mehmet Su commented, sincerity means doing something as we are told to do so. Sadaqat means trustworthiness, or sadaqat, you know, he also, Abu Bakr Siddiq, right? And Siddiq, trustworthy, the one who is loyal, means doing the same thing the way they do. Like, I guess, following someone in the same way, in the exact same way. Sincerity, iqamatul salah, praying as we are expected to do so, for praying. Sadaqat means praying salat the way our Prophet ﷺ did it. Okay, so I think he's goes into like the details of the etymology of these words and how they mean, how that would manifest in our life. Jazakallah khair for that comment. Hubbuja, I think this is a comment from Jesma Abi, says Lighthouse for Humanity, but I think this is Jesma Abi who made this comment. Hubbuja, and I think it is probably about the there was a mention of ambition, disease of ambition, but this is actually originally, I think it is Hubbuja, so it might not really give the correct word. Hubbuja, there's a definition here: the desire for fame, renown, and position. This is a serious spiritual sickness that also opens the door to the hypocrisy and self-centeredness called the hidden association of partners with Allah and damages sincerity. Again, he gave a quote from Flash's explaining the word of hubbuja. In this case, it is called ambition, but it's actually not exactly that. It is love of position almost. And those are the comments. And last comment, a couple two comments, I guess. One is from Jesma Bey again. According to an inner meaning of the ayah, in the chat, it's not very clear. Ilayhi, or maybe the title, Ilayhi yas'adul kalimu tayyib. Okay, it's very small and the font is, if I didn't say it right, may Allah forgive me. To him ascend all good words. From an ayah from Quran. One elevated and important duty of the element air is to be an ever-changing page for the pen of divine power in order to make heard all the angels and spirit beings in the globe of the air, the beautiful, meaningful, veracious words of belief inscribed by the pen of divine determining and spread through divine permission, and to convey them to the supreme throne. I think this is an opening up of that like written words on the page of air. I think it's another part from Emirda letters from Risale-i Nur. Jazakallah khair. And finally, from Harun Abi, it again boils down to perspective and intention. Knowledge coming from any source, such as science, philosophy, etc., has the potential to be transformed into knowledge of Allah. Similarly, any religious knowledge has a potential to be transformed into vain. Subhanallah. Yeah, this is another great comment. Any reflections about these, Fatabi or Kolnabi, before I go to the fourth cause?
I want to add to essential word إليه يسعد الكلم الطيب.
Okay, yeah.
It's one of my recent reflections. When we talk, we know that our voice goes in the room as airwaves, and then as the airwaves die or observe, it becomes heat. It's very, very little heat, but as they die, I mean, they don't go away. They become heat, and then it becomes, that heat is dispersed as infrared radiation. So, for example, especially outside, when we say something, it goes to the space indefinitely. That airwave becomes heat, transforms into heat, and then it transforms to infrared radiation, and then it travels through the space, even though we don't have the technology yet to see it or hear it. So that's a scientific explanation for that verse that I understand.
Subhanallah. No, this is actually a great point. From a physicist's point of view, I think this is a great reflection of all good words elevating, ascending to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. I didn't know about that small piece of infrared radiation, airwaves turning into that. But makes sense, makes complete sense. Jazakallah khair. Any other reflections about the comments from you, Fatabi?
Oh, no, thank you.
Korin Hocam, any reflections on these comments from the audience before I go into
no, not really.
Okay. All right, so inshallah I'll start fourth. So we have about less than 15 minutes or so to go. But inshallah I'll read, and inshallah we can have some comments of that too. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Fourth cause. In just the same way that rivalry and disagreement among the people of guidance do not arise from failure to foresee consequences or from short-sightedness, so too wholehearted agreement among the people of misguidance does not result from farsightedness or loftiness of vision. Rather, the people of guidance, through the influence of truth and reality, do not succumb to the blind emotions of the soul and follow instead the far-sighted inclinations of the heart and the intellect. Since, however, they fail to preserve their sense of direction and their sincerity, they are unable to maintain their high station and fall into disputes. As for the people of misguidance, under the influence of the soul and caprice, the nafs and caprice, and the dominance of sense perception, which is blind to all consequences and always prefers an ounce of immediate pleasure to a ton of future pleasure, they come together in eager concord for the sake of instant benefit and immediate pleasure. Indeed, lowly and heartless worshippers of the ego are bound to congregate around worldly and immediate pleasures and benefits. It is true that the people of guidance have set their faces to the rewards of the hereafter and its perfections in accordance with the lofty instructions of the heart and the intellect. But even though a proper sense of direction, a complete sincerity and self-sacrificing union and concord are possible, I guess due to these, because they have failed to rid themselves of egoism, and on account of deficiency and excess, ifrat and tefrit, they lose their union, that lofty source of power, and permit their sincerity to be shattered. Their duty in regard to the hereafter is also harmed, and it makes it harder to gain Allah's pleasure. The cure and remedy for this serious disease is to be proud of the company of all those traveling the path of truth, in accordance with the principle of love for Allah's sake, al-hubbu fillah, to follow them and defer leadership to them, and to consider whoever is walking on Allah's path to be probably better than oneself, thereby breaking the ego and regaining sincerity. Salvation is also to be had from that disease by knowing that an ounce of deeds performed in sincerity is preferable to a ton performed without sincerity, and by preferring the status of a follower to that of a leader, with all the danger and responsibility that it involves, the leadership involves. Thus, sincerity is to be had, and one's duties of preparation for the hereafter may be correctly performed. So it is again about rivalry, of course. But one thing that I wanted to mention, especially like towards the end, right? I mean, I think we kind of get, you know, ego, ifrat tefrit, if deficiency excess, we kind of lose the sense of hereafter or this thing. But I think the second part about the remedy here, and this is probably something that is hard for the ego, I guess, but this is interesting too, like preferring followership to leadership, and there's also, I guess, he talks about it, risks that are involved in leadership positions, which we can probably reflect upon a little bit. But also something that is interesting is and to consider whoever is walking on Allah's path to be probably better than oneself. So again, seeing others as probably better than yourself. And then I'll share my reflection, and then I will let our speakers talk about this. My reflections on this has been, this usually comes to my mind when I'm in a mosque, for example, and I see someone who might not be praying with the, you know, with the whole arkan. I mean, they're praying, of course, but they're missing, you know, they might be doing to the letter, to the sunnah, right? How they sit, or you know, how they do. And my ego or like one side of me says, oh, you know, this guy, you know, doesn't know how to pray properly or something. It happens a lot in the US, of course, when you have like lots of converts who just learned the religion and stuff too. But then, you know, this part really comes to my mind, and think about, you know, how sincere they might be, how more they could actually be better than me in terms of their focus, a khushu in the salah, and then my mind, because and my salah is spent with thinking about others, and again, it helps me break my ego. And of course, some of these things that we see in the masajid a lot about, like people you know, showing or pointing out any visible deficiencies, right, about the people around them. And sometimes you never see that person again because they lose heart coming to the masjid again. But this is like my reflection. Again, this part comes to my mind a lot about those situations. But I would like to get your reflections too, inshallah. Maybe Fatih Abi, should we start with you?
Yeah, this fourth cause, I mean, one thing to remember is as Muslims, we are trying to attain the real future, which is hereafter. So, but like people who doesn't care about hereafter, they are trying to gain success in the near future in this life. So we know from human psychology that immediate rewards are more preferable than the ones that are gonna come later. So using, Ustad also mentions this in another part of Risale, that people of misguidance or who don't care about religion, they use all their faculties, which are given to human beings, to gain the hereafter for this world. So if you pay a price of diamond for a crystal or something made out of glass, not real diamond, you can buy the best crystal, but it's not the diamond. So they are using their faculties which are given to them to gain the hereafter for this world, so they can get a very good worldly life with those faculties. So that's, in addition to the points you mentioned here.
Yeah,
So it makes it easier because human beings are in favor of they love immediate rewards. It's easier for them to gain come together around worldly rewards.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it probably connects to the previous pieces, right? Like where we read about like the materialism kind of cause-effect relationship, and then you also inserted the immediate reward. And here, right, also there's that like there's inclination, there's the where was it? People of misguidance under the influence of the soul. Sense perception is not like his, right? But just their animal senses, right? They're just immediate pleasure. You've inserted that, like, and they see, as you said, they give all their attention to this. They basically focus on this earth, and it gives some immediate results because it is a worldly thing, and the results are gained in the world. So, and then more people come together around that because they kind of see immediate rewards of that type of a work that makes some immediate pleasure, and probably sounds good to the nafs as well, who is always desiring immediate pleasures, instant gratification anyways. So that's interesting. But like for people of guidance, of course, the real benefits are in the hereafter. And it can create a lofty sense of direction, but then when ego comes in, then maybe, right, for people of guidance, they just lose it, they forget about it, or they get maybe distracted with these worldly things, and not keep
It's
that.
kind of misuse of belief in the hereafter or working for the hereafter. Like you don't regard the feelings of your fellow brothers and sisters. So it's kind of misuse of those feelings.
Oh, I see. Yeah. You don't care about this world, but that also that's this interesting point. Yeah, it's like you care about the hereafter, but anything in this world, even if it hurts the hereafter, yeah, you miss the point, right? Like by thinking of it as it's just a worldly thing. This only affects this world and nothing for the hereafter. So yeah, great point. Colin abi, any reflections from you about this?
Not really. I think that that Fatih has said all that needs to be said, really. They asked Attar, I think Attar or Rumi, a question about personal behavior and belief, and he said, "Listen, if you want to know how to get rid of all the problems in your life, stop saying I." And basically, what he's saying is, that the problem is with egoism. And if you add to that materialism, and if you add to that our unwillingness or maybe inability to understand causality, our consequentialism, the things that, consequences follow. If I do something, then there should be a result. and if I do something good, there should be a good result. This is consequentialism. And we have to be very careful, because it often happens that I do something good and I don't see the result. There is a consequence to my actions, but they're not always visible in this world, in this life. So all of these things come together, really. You know,
Yeah.
sincerity, intention, understanding causality, understanding the two realms, and working properly within those confines, having a spiritual aspiration, but not having a materialistic approach to life. All of these things need to be taken into account, I think.
Yeah. It's a thin line at the end of the day, looks like, sounds like.
Sorry?
It's a thin line to walk
Yeah,
on.
yeah, very, very thin line. But
Yeah.
that's the same with everything we do, really, as believers. There's a thin line between belief and unbelief.
Yeah. It's a constant struggle, a constant, I guess, probably brings us back to the hadith that we started with about it's in a great, all the sincere are in great danger. So maybe there is that line. We always have the risk of losing sincerity and never gaining sincerity. Yeah, Jazakallah khair. So we are about the end of our time. So if there are any final thoughts, Fatab, any final thoughts about these sections that we read from you?
No, thank you.
Okay. Konab, I know you just talked, but if there are any final, again, we will have one more week on this topic, inshallah, so that, we can, touch on the remaining three causes, inshallah.
No, I don't have any final remarks. We're just waiting for Fatih to do a dua at the end.
Okay,
Inshallah.
finally, I guess before that, our Nabi wrote that it's interesting that Nursi puts ego and nature concepts together to represent idols. So, subhanAllah, this is really an interesting point. I think there is probably a few different places in the Risale-i-Nur pointing to that. Ego in the inner world and nature in the outer world, having two idols of this age, probably. So these are really very interesting things to ponder upon, inshallah. Fatah, would you like to end with a dua for us, inshallah?
اللهم بحق سورة الإخلاص اجعلنا من عبادك المخلصين المخلصين. O God, for the sake of Surah Al-Ikhlas, place us among your servants to attain sincerity. Amin. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Glory be unto you. We have no knowledge save that which you have taught us. Indeed, you are all knowing, all wise.